And so is it any wonder that they're the ones that paid the tens of millions of dollars to get the bill through? Because they want to legitimize bad behavior, which in reality should be outlawed. I mean, that's the reality of it. It should be outlawed. Instead, it is, you know, this is the newest generation of food safety. But what it is, it's a legitimization of bad behavior. And that's the bottom line. And then they want to apply that to the small local farmer, because there's this movement going on in the country of local food. You're probably aware of that, many of you. But it's growing, and people are starting to wake up to the fact that it's important what I put into my body. And so they're going, what are my alternatives? And when you understand what we looked about the organic label, and the organic label is put there so that the end user doesn't have to know the producer. In other words, we've got this label that is there to give us confidence that we're eating something that's, of a certain standard, without knowing who produced it and how and why. Good idea? Not a good idea. So people are starting to understand that. Well, as part of this food safety, the Monsantos, Cargill, ConAgras, they want to control everything. And so there's some things in that bill that are not, it's bad. It's bad news. For two reasons. For a local producer, you're not subject to the regulations if you have $500,000 per year in revenue or less. Well, $500,000 in revenue isn't very much. That's revenue. That's not profit. That's revenue. Then you're subject. And so a small producer like us that goes year-round, we're going to be above that. And so we're going to be subject to all the regulations that a ConAgra is subject to. Now, does that make sense? And so the first thing is all the paperwork. And even because there's a lot of vagueness in the law, and I think that's kind of on purpose for two reasons. So that there's maneuvering, for one, and the second one is so that the congressmen and senators don't have to really commit to something concrete. If it's a little nebulous, then they've got room to, say, well, I was for this because it means this. But at the end of the day, who decides what that law really says? The regulator. And guess who that is? The FDA. That's who gets to decide. And so we would have to produce 3 years of financials. We'd have to produce a plan for if we had a food safety issue with some of our food, and it has to be approved by the FDA in order for us to opt out. And we have to be less than $500,000 in revenue. If you're above that, then you've got to apply to it. All of the problems that we've seen that are publicized don't come from any local farm. They come from the big agribusiness, because just the nature of the way they do things, you're going to have problems. And probably the main reason for that is the fact that it's a sterile environment. What's the problem with a sterile environment? Anybody know? There is no checks and balances. There's no checks and balances, absolutely. Did you know that our bodies, that we have a factor of 10 times the number of bacteria in our body as we have cells? That's how much bacteria we have. Good? Yeah, I mean, that's what we are. We are a living being. Now, why do we have all that bacteria? What's so good about it? The checks and balances. Because we've got there's bad stuff running around, but there's all this good stuff, and everything stays balanced. And when you get sick, it's when the bacteria counts go out of balance, and then you get sick. And so if you have something bad coming in, what's going to happen to it? Your first line of defense is your own body. Well, it's the same thing in the production. As soon as you sterilize everything, you eliminate that buffer. It's just gone. And so if something does, like an E. coli, salmonella, or what have you, develops, it's just a straight shot. I mean, there's nothing there to hold it back. Is there any wonder that we have these outbreaks? Because as soon as you have, and so the idea is, well, we're going to kill everything, and that way we won't have an outbreak. But can you really do that? I mean, even in the potable water standards, it's about a coliform count, because you can't absolutely kill everything. And so when we sterilize, but we know we can't kill absolutely everything, what does it do? What does that set up? It sets you up for an outbreak. It just does. Now, take our carrots. We grow carrots. And so we'll go out, pull them, shake as much dirt off as we can, and put it in your box. So which carrot would you like to eat? Yeah. Yeah. And so here's the, local natural, the safest and most nutritious. History confirms that local natural approach combined with the opportunity for the customer to know your farmer represents the best policy by its very nature. That's just it. But we have this albatross of a law, and you know what? The way they do things, they better be regulated. You have to regulate them. But the other piece besides the extra paperwork and hassle that a local grower would have to go through for that is what it could do to your food. Now, why is our food so good? Besides it's picked ripe. What's the other reason? Because it's alive. It's full of bacteria. In fact, you may find some bugs in there. You have to wash them off. But it's alive. But what does the big agribusiness food safety, what do they want if that applies to you? They want everything dead. And so if we have to be subject to that, and it's still nebulous as to what it's going to be, but at the end of the day, we may have to destroy the goodness of our whole program in order to be in compliance, which I can guarantee we wouldn't do. We would not be in compliance. And then they can come get us, and we'll see. Yeah?
So the mass-producing big agriculture farms, they have to do this as part of that compliance. They have to use the pesticides. There's no way around it for them to do mass production of organic without using pesticides?
Well, the problem is this. The problem is this, is that when you're producing that stuff, and you're bringing it into a facility, you know, with huge volume, you're setting yourself up because you're accumulating everything in there. And it doesn't end there. I mean, that's part of it. But the other thing is that rather than producing something that's going to go to the consumer that same day, you've got to do it in such a way because it's not going to be consumed today nor tomorrow, and it may not get consumed until next week. It may be 3 weeks from now. And so you've got to have everything in such a way that that you can maintain the integrity of the food for 3 weeks. Well, that's not natural. That is, I mean, that's stupid, really. If you're talking about food safety, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And that's why local is so valuable, and why local, you're not going to have a problem with local. And so to counter this, there's a law being put forth in the state legislature that's using states' rights, which is 10th Amendment issues. And so as that comes up, it should come up here, you know, probably next week. You know, maybe be aware of that and tell your representative, your senator, you know, we want this food safety Utah bill, which would exempt a local grower. The reason being that the Constitution is clear that interstate commerce is fed, but intrastate commerce, which within the state, is a state's right. And as a local grower, we're not going to ship to Colorado or to Arizona or to Idaho. I mean, we're producing it here. And so we shouldn't be subject to the Fed law because this is state. And our local, we should be regulated locally because that's what we should do. And so that's what that law is. So it's important. It is important. Okay. I'm just going to, here's a few pictures, if you can see those very well. But we've had some challenges with our greenhouses that we had. I designed them for 25 pounds per square foot, and right before Christmas we got that snow that was 20 inches deep. We got 20 inches down at the farm, very wet, and I figured it was probably 35 pounds per square foot. You know, about 25% over design. And so we lost some of the roof, several of the roofing of some of our bays. But they're still covered, and so we're still planting in there, and then we'll repair those. But these are some pictures from before. But this is our heating system right here. We've dug trenches every 39 inches in the ground, and we've put this tubing in there. It's flexible tubing. And in the acre, there's about 30,000 gallons, which serves as thermal mass, and it's also the heat transport system. And so we heat water here, and with a circulating pump, we push hot water through those. And we're able to, there's a manifold on each side, and there's a valve in here, and so these are at 39 inches apart, and so we have a row here, and then a row here, and a row here. We can change the temperature of the soil in each one of those. And so we can have a different soil temperature. And so it allows you to do a cool crop, a cold crop, warm crop, all in the same facility. And so really
growing season goes from
year round.
Wow.
Yeah, year round. And so that's what, you know, we spend a lot of time, effort, money to do this, and we're breaking a lot of new ground because I've got a lot of experience in, you know, Latin America, in Europe even, and in the United States, and there's nothing like this anywhere. It's kind of a hybrid invention, you know, trying to find new ways to do things because typically big agriculture, they'll produce like one crop. You know, it'll be a tomato grower, and they may have peppers and maybe some cucumbers, but that's really the extent of it. Whereas a CSA, you've got to put in that box, you know, all kinds of different variety. Yeah.